Hey everyone, and welcome to the Marvel Snap Decks of the Week. Now, this week we're trying things a little different. There's going to be over-the-air updates coming every single Thursday for the next little while, and so it's going to have a major shakeup on the Marvel Snap meta. Now, in the past, what we had done was we did like a straight-up tiered list of decks that were like kind of on top, you know, the Shuri, Thanos, and blah, blah, blah. And I was doing that, and people were like, hey, yeah, this is good, but it's kind of getting boring, Alex. Why don't you hit us with something a little different? So we're going to be experimenting with a different style of video here, where I'm going to be trying to throw, like, yes, some tried, tested, and true style decks at you, but also some experimental decks, some decks that are performing really well in statistics that are kind of up and risers that'll help give you an edge over your competition. These are decks that, like, you might be first to kind of notice. We're digging into the data here to find what's working and perhaps not the highest popularity to give you an opportunity to kind of be ahead of the meta and perhaps get an edge in the ranked ladder. With that being said, let me know what you think of the new format down below in the comment section, and if you'd like to support the series, smash the like button. It makes a tremendous difference for me and on the algorithm. It's free, and seriously, it makes a world of difference, and I appreciate your support. With that being said, let's talk about the first deck of the week, and it is DarkMonkey Bounce. And I love this deck because, like, in my experiment, it's actually been pretty damn solid, and I really like the idea of essentially running up a Darkhawk while essentially using your Beast and your Falcon in conjunction with something like a Korg to really stuff their deck with rocks right off the bat. And I mean, you're running up an Angela, you're running up Hitmonkey, who you can then, of course, bounce back. You're stuffing their opportunity to play legitimate cards with Widow's Bite, which you can then bounce back to your hand, which is absolutely wild. It basically denies 2 draws from them, which basically, along with Korg as well in the rocks, keeps their deck stuffed, which makes Darkhawk really huge. And so there's a couple things happening here. Obviously you have the Bishop into the Mysterio combination, the Bast, which makes the Mysterio into like a mini Doctor Doom, making all the Mysterios basically 3s, including the illusions, while also providing Bishop with 3 extra procs, and of course Hitmonkey with 3 extra procs. Now, because of the space limitations, you generally want to play Mysterio on turn 6. Just bear that in mind with the Miracle Hand with Hitmonkey once it's been bounced back with Beast. Now, Darkhawk is a great closer as well. There's an argument to be made that you can also kind of mix in Mystique into a deck like this, because, I mean, you don't have a 5 or 6, so Mystique can be played on turn 6. An argument can also be made of running Chavez to ensure that you do have the Beast and, you know, the Hitmonkey at some point in the game as well, right? So Chavez helps to kind of front load your card draw. At the end of the day, this is one of the more experimental deck lists, but one that's actually performing really well in current data, about 55% win rate. And regardless, I do think that Hitmonkey is in a really interesting place and kind of doing things, and I think we're going to be talking about Hitmonkey for the foreseeable future, because this card is damn good. The next deck we're talking about this week is Gunny Patriot, and the thing I like about Gunny Patriot is that it kind of has a lot of free-to-play friendly cards in here. I mean, you look at Abomination, Thing, Leech, like these are really inexpensive cards. Squirrel Girl, Misty, like the list goes on. I mean, the only kind of pool 3 requirements are basically Ultron, Patriot, Debris, and Mystique, right? And I mean, you're likely to have Mystique at this point because it's such a valuable card. It's one of those ones that you probably target in your unlocks. But Gunny Patriot's fantastic, and full kudos to KMBest, by the way, who really put Gunny Patriot on the radar. He actually did a full video guide on it as well with some gameplay examples, and he's one of the best players in the game, so I'll link it down below. You definitely got to check it out. He's a fantastic player. His Twitch stream's great. And Gunny Patriot is a great list. It's fantastic. It's coming from the Korean tournament scene, and I just really love how inexpensive it is. I love the idea of running Thing and Abomination, which at first glance you're like, really, Alex? Thing and Abomination? But it actually makes perfect sense. Like, Abomination's a 5/9, so like in these decks, especially when you have Patriot, Debris, you have the Ultron, like you kind of gotta want to go like super high and powerful in one specific lane, and like Thing and Abomination do that, right? Like they get like really high in a single lane, and that's what you want. And then when you allow the Ultron and the drones to kind of provide the value across the board, then hey, like you've got yourself a win condition, don't you? So I think that Gunny Patriot is a really fascinating list. I think Patriot's overall making a comeback, which is kind of cool to see, especially with Shuri getting nerfed as much as that archetype is, and probably going to be in the future as well, because Patriot's like kind of susceptible to Shuri. You don't have a lot of answers for Shuri. Yes, you have Shang-Chi, but you don't have any of that displacement, right? But ultimately, I do think Gunny Patriot is a really fascinating Patriot list, and the one to play if you're looking for a list in the current meta. Now, with Hitmonkey running rampant, I think a lot of people are looking for like kind of inexpensive pool 3 base lists that they can turn to in order to assure that they can like counter the meta and have some success. And I think that this Electro Ramp does do that. Electro Ramp is one of my absolute favorite deck archetypes. I basically cover it every single month because I just love it. It's one of my favorite and it's an absolute go-to. And this is a bit of a variation of it here because I actually found that Jubilee was an interesting card to run an Electro Ramp because I was originally kind of dodging that Jubilee and just running the Wave and the Electro, especially with something like Chavez. But if you get rid of the Chavez, right, it allows you to run something like Jubilee, which is, you know, interesting because Chavez actually works well with Jubilee. But realistically, with this deck here, you're running so heavy on the top, like Jubilee's going to hit something. It's going to hit something good. If it hits Odin, it's just double procs. If it hits Doctor Doom, it sets up an Odin after. If it hits Captain Marvel, it's free value. And of course, Double Dinosaur, you're playing an Electro deck because you're going to probably have a big hand, and these cards are so damn expensive, right? So this is a bit of a variation of the Electro deck, which I know a lot of people are interested in. I honestly, it's really not that expensive. You can sub out like a Captain Marvel for someone like Vision, who I think is fantastic. And ultimately, I mean, the Splash Devil Dinosaur is always fun. And it's just a deck that honestly is just a ton of fun to play. And that Sandman, honestly, it reliably counters a lot of the current meta right now and can be a key source to you getting to Infinite this season. Now, as I mentioned prior, I was interested in showcasing some kind of like hot and emerging deck lists that haven't exactly made the biggest splash in the meta yet, but have impressive win rates and are doing very well in the current meta. And Shenaut Control does exactly that. I love the inclusion of something like Scarlet Witch because on aggregate, if they have an advantageous location that's working for them, Scarlet Witch kind of nullifies that. I mean, it can definitely screw you over, but generally speaking, that 2-3 power, it's pretty effective at kind of just taking away a location that's just too advantageous for them. Generally speaking, the result is just fine. I like the idea of having Psylocke. Psylocke gives you a lot of choices, specifically with something like Magic, who can extend the game to turn 7, which is part of the core strategy here, okay? Yes, you have the Moon Girl, the Moon Girl and She-Hulk play, which is kind of core to the strategy here, because playing multiple She-Hulks, I mean, that's just pure value. And the idea here is when you skip turn 6, you run up your Sunspot, which has recently been nerfed, but that Sunspot does run up on turn 6, and what that allows you to do is play, especially if you've Moon Girled, 2 She-Hulks for free and an Infinaut. So you're adding a ton of power on the board. It's kind of like this Miracle turn 7 style play. Be very wary of them, like, you know, storming or Scarlet Witching the Limbo. That's kind of the risk you kind of take here. So if they snap on you on turn 6, like, you might want to be a little wary about potentially what you're doing here. You don't go 8 cubes generally with this kind of deck, but if you're on turn 7, then maybe you can be a little more confident with that turn skip effect. Regardless, right, you got a lot of value cards here. I mean, I love what Iceman does. You have the Ant-Man, because with that armor, you're going to be protecting, especially the Sunspot Ant-Man, you know, Scarlet Witch, Psylocke, or whatever it happens to be. The Cosmo protects something like an Infinaut, although it's going to be coming down on turn 7 under most circumstances. And if you don't pull Magic, you still have the classic, you know, skip turn 5 into the turn 6, you know, Infinaut if you have that, or you have the She-Hulk capabilities with Sunspot as well, which is, you know, obviously you get to play around the kind of variable energy cost of She-Hulk as you deem required. But ultimately, you really want that Moon Girl She-Hulk Infinaut play on turn 7. That's kind of what revolves this deck, what makes it pump. But overall, I do think it's a really interesting list and one you can rely on if, like, you're relatively early in Pool 3, because it only has a few Pool 3 cards. One of my absolute favorite deck archetypes in Marvel Snap is Silver Surfer, and I'm so glad that Silver Surfer is making a comeback. And I've been experimenting with a whole ton of different Surfer lists, and my personal brew is a little different than this, but this is kind of like the new meta version of Silver Surfer, which is starting to emerge here. And I like it. I like it a lot. Like, you have the classic kind of Maximus Polaris, like just a ton of value here. You got 3/5, 3/7. It's just good stuff. I love, and I still stand behind the Nova Killmonger package. It's so good. Like, it clears so much value off the board, especially against Thanos, because players are relying on the stones now as actually kind of a core part of the deck. So you totally take out those Thanos-based lists. I do love the Storm Juggernaut combination. The nerf to Thanos's, you know, Space Stone makes Juggernaut and Storm viable again. And I love the inclusion of Goose, because what Goose allows you to do is slide under Goose, because all your things cost 3, and it really limits your opponent's play. The only card you got to be aware of is Sarah because it can't go on top of the Goose location. Mr. Fantastic brewed Silver Surfer as a fantastic closer. The 3-2 on Silver Surfer makes it a little more confident as a single play in a given lane. And overall, like honestly, I think Silver Surfer's in a pretty good spot. It lacks the ability to deal with Shuri very effectively. Like you can deny space, and Goose kind of is like the anti-Shuri because you can't play Red Skull or Taskmaster onto a Goose location. But generally speaking, it can be a little tricky because you don't run a Shang-Chi in this list, which you can if you really want, but it can feel a little awkward. But regardless of that, I am going to be releasing some Silver Surfer gameplay coming soon, guys. I got a fantastic list that I think is a really nice brew, but I do think Silver Surfer is making a comeback, which I think is cool because I really like that deck archetype. When covering the meta, I think it's really important that we keep in mind that the Wave Turn 5 gameplay style decks are still super powerful. Wave Turn 5 is a great counter to like many of these combo-centric decks out there, like just like the Silver Surfer one I talked about. Hitmonkey's affected by it. But generally speaking, I love Wave 5 decks. And this one is probably the best one right now and the least expensive, right? You do have Sunspot, Iceman, Scorpion. This is a great opener look. You just have great cards opening up. I love Mooster Fantastic here. You know, you're just able to kind of really hold initiative. You have the answers to those big cards like Devil Dinosaur with something like Shang-Chi. White Queen, just value and extra scouting. Arrow is fantastic in Wave style decks because if you limit their ability to play more than one card, like Wave generally forces them to play one card, right? Some cards can kind of sneak under based on their print, like their kind of effects and stuff like that. But generally speaking, Arrow becomes much more reliable in a Wave 5 deck. And of course, you get that free She-Hulk, right? Which is great because on turn 5, for those that don't realize, on turn 5 you play Wave and nothing else. You save 2 energy. That makes She-Hulk cost 4, -2, 2 energy. You have 6 total. Cards cost 4 because of Wave, which allows you to play She-Hulk in something like a Doctor Doom. So you're getting, 30 power across the board and the She-Hulk 9 in a concentrated spot. It's what makes this deck so good. It's what makes it so reliable. Its win rate is fantastic. And if you want to rely on something that like is relatively straightforward to play and like isn't like Sandman level countering the meta, it just has a good answer to the meta in general, I think this is the one. Do y'all like junkyards? Well, I mean, probably not. I mean, when was the last time you were in a junkyard, really? I mean, sometimes your car breaks down, it's old, and you're like, I don't want to buy a new thingy for it, so I'm going to go to the junkyard. Anyways, what the hell am I talking about? What I'm going to talk about here is that Junkyard Hazmat is a fantastic list, and like, this is one that's been hovering around, and like, okay, there's been like the super greedy Hazmat list where you're running like Wong, Mystique, Odin. It's just like, you're trying to like miracle them to like -50 at every location and stuff, but I mean, now with the kind of like miracle monkey meta that's happening right now and a lot of the combo centric stuff that's happening, this deck just kind of shines and just stuffing their board with garbage. And I mean, you play the Hood, you kick it over with Viper. Beautiful. If you don't have Hood, you play the Black Widow, you Widows bite them, and then you kick over the Black Widow with Viper. Beautiful, right? Luke Cage is an absolutely fantastic card that works wonderfully with something like Typhoid Mary. You have the anti-Galactus play of Green Goblin. Debris also anti-Galactus. Like you just don't lose to Galactus with this deck here, right? Carnage cleans up your side, right? Shang-Chi gives you some viable plays here. Actually, Deathlock's good in this deck as well to clean stuff up. Typhoid Mary, just super value in conjunction with Luke Cage, of course. Because of the amount of garbage you're putting on their side of the board, Spider-Woman is excellent value and can even be a closer, honestly. You can close with Spider-Woman and the Demon, which is great on turn 6. Or you have the option, of course, of playing Doctor Doom for 30 power across the board, which is difficult for them to contend with because if you're filling the board with debris and stuff like that, and you have that Hazmat, you're able to do a lot of damage. Now, the thing about this as well is you often see the Doom getting cut out of these deck lists, and the reason why you see that is that so you can play something like a Hazmat on turn 6. And that's something worth noting as well, because you can do something like Hazmat and Absorbing Man, for instance, which is a pretty cool combination as well. It's been one that I've been experimenting, but like this is kind of like the meta version. But my brew version of this deck list would probably get rid of Doctor Doom and include Absorbing Man. You go turn 5 Spider-Woman, and then turn 6 you can Hazmat into the Absorbing Man, which I think is cool. It's basically like a Wong style effect. And obviously Absorbing Man gives you some added utility with some of the other cards as well, because you can kick over whatever you you know, you can use it like a Viper, kick over another rock from debris and etc. Right? It gives you a lot of other options as well. This is like my brood version of it. I do like this deck. I do think it's a lot of fun. It doesn't do well against Sandman Ramp, which is kind of really popular. Like Electro Ramp is probably a retreat condition for you, and the current Shuri too. But like any of the combo lists like hate it because they run out of space, and it just does a good job against them, honestly. All right, so I know that I've changed a lot about this video this week, and I wanted to know in the comments, like if you're a pool 2 person, like are you still like wanting to see pool 2 only decks? Like I'm not quite sure how many people are actually benefiting from the pool 2 only list. It was one of those things I almost kind of was like, you know what, I'm gonna keep it in because I just think people still want some pool 2 stuff. So here we are. This is classic Infinaut. Like, I mean, I really think this is one you can go to, and I like the inclusion of Star-Lord as an inexpensive card. You know, it's just your typical kind of like gain initiative, get as much value as you can with the Nightcrawler Angela combination, disrupt their hand with the Iceman. You got to use the Cookie Ant-Man, why wouldn't you, with the Sunspot armor. And then what you do is you storm a location, you drop the Jessica Jones. If you don't have JJ, a good option is Star-Lord in the stormed location. That's why Star-Lord's in the list. You storm a location, and then they're pretty much going to follow up there, which makes Star-Lord a 2/5, which is great if you don't have that Jessica Jones. And then, of course, on turn 5, you skip turn 5 with the Sunspot. Sunspot ramps up by 5, and you drop that Infinaut on 6. Very classic gameplay. One thing that you could do as well is you can sub a card out, put in someone like Shang-Chi if you're facing a lot of Devil Dinosaur, although Devil Dinosaurs are likely to hide behind your armor, unfortunately, which you have to use to protect your Sunspot and Ant-Man anyway, because Killmonger's all over the place. But regardless, guys, thank you so much for watching. As I said prior, if you like the series, hitting the like button means the world to me. It is a tremendous difference on the algorithm, and it supports me so much. You have no idea. I appreciate you guys, and I got another video for you down below. So if you want to watch more Marvel Snap content, click on that link right there. Guys, I love you, and we'll see you in the next Marvel Snap video.